Hello, and thank you for joining us today on this second of our YouTube little clips that we've put together as a way of spreading some sort of spiritual hope to our congregation during this time of COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Captain Shane Healey, and along with my wife, Captain Sarah, we're the ministers at City Salvos in Adelaide on Perry Street. And so when all this is over, we'd love to see you there and love to meet you and worship alongside you. At the moment, and this week, we are looking at our self-denial, finishing our self-denial series. And this Sunday would have been, or is, our Appeal Sunday. And so we've been given the challenge and the opportunity to do this virtually this year. And that's going to be new for many of us, and so we look forward to how you respond to that and how you're obedient to God and what He's speaking to you in your life. And if you want some information about that, please just see the newsletter or head to selfdenial.info and then just click on the AU button or donate. It's reasonably self-explanatory, but just give us a ring if you don't understand and we'll help you through that one. Today, I'm so used to saying this morning, I wanted to share with you about 1 John 4:21, where he calls us to love one another. And it gives me the feeling that it's an intentional commandment here to love one another. Because in that way we'll know that we're His disciples. God loved us, and so we're to love one another. Sarah and I are in the midst of a 14-day isolation period, as you know, from having returned from New Zealand. And so we're up to day 4, and I'm still alive, so thank God for that. But we're being really intentional. We've sat down, we've had a little meeting together, and we sat down about how we're going to approach this space together. Sarah and I live, work, and play together, and sometimes we can easily overlook each other as we go about what we're doing. And so we're really taking time at the moment to be intentional about practicing kindness towards each other, to giving each other space. We've got our own offices, and Sarah's set up in the little music room that we've created for her, and I'm in the office here at home. We're listening to each other, really listening to each other, which gives me more opportunity to have coffee, which is great. We're taking phone calls from you guys and giving phone calls out, and we're also having Zoom meetings. We had our first leadership team Zoom meeting, and I've had a Bible study by Zoom meeting, and these are all new things for a Southland farmer like me, a New Zealand farmer, but I'm catching on, and I'm enjoying the challenge of what that is. So my challenge to you today is about being intentional about how you're loving each other. And in the busyness of life, normally these things can be easily overlooked. And so I want you to consider today, how is it that you are intentionally loving those around you? And particularly also, how are you loving those that are outside of your sphere of community? Jesus tells us in John chapter 13, 34 to 35, that He gives us this new commandment that we're to love one another. And it kind of made me question and think that, what does He mean by a new commandment? Because it's not really a new commandment. We read in Leviticus that they're told to love one another as His people, as God's people. And so the command being to love one another isn't new, so to speak. So what's the new aspect to this? Well, the new aspect is about that we're to love each other as Jesus loved us, and as Jesus loved His Father in heaven. And this was around being intentional. Christ was very intentional about what He did and what He said and where He walked and who He helped with, and also how He listened to what God's will was on His life. And a golden example of this is the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus says, and he's praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, He says, God, not my will, but your will be done. And of course that led even to death on a cross for Him. There was a desire from Christ to do His Father's will, not His own, and to see His Father's will done. And so we're encouraging you to be intentional about loving others beyond ourselves, to what it is that God is saying to you, doing His will within your life. self-denial appeal, these last 6 weeks have given us an opportunity to hear from God about what it is that we're prepared to sacrificially put aside and give, so that the army can continue its work overseas and in some countries that are doing it far worse than what we are. And so I can really encourage you to not say, oh yeah, we got a free year this year, but to really click on the link and to put your financial giving through via the internet. It would be a real honour and a real blessing to many others who are going to receive that. And so I encourage you to be intentional about doing that. I encourage you to also be intentional about loving others within your community as well. How are you loving your neighbours during this time who are probably very fearful or afraid? How are you loving your staff? How are you loving your spouses, your children? How are you loving your colleagues and your friends? You know, all those within your sphere of community. How are you showing love to them during this time of COVID-19? The other day I asked for good news stories, and Sarah and I have been encouraged to hear the ones that we have so far, and we'd encourage you to continue sharing those good news stories about what God is doing in your life and how God is creating opportunities or giving you opportunities to continue to love others. So yeah, my real message to you today is about being intentional and about making the choice to listen to what God's will is on your life and to follow that in obedience to Him. Our mission as the Salvation Army here in Australia is to live, love and fight alongside others. And even in the midst of a pandemic of COVID-19, nothing has changed. We still want to live, we still want to love, and we still want to fight alongside others. Obviously respecting the social distancing kind of stuff that we need to do to keep each other safe. But we want to be able to do that as a way. We want to continue to love each other and show love. And we need to be creative around how we do that. And so I encourage you to explore that. But until we meet again and until I hear from you on the phone, my message to you is to love each other, to be kind to each other, and to be intentional about listening to what God's will is on your life and how you can share His love with others. God bless, and thanks for tuning in.